They sold everything I worked for to cover my brother's mistakes. My dream was crushed, but I refused to stay down. From the ashes, I built a new future they never saw coming. I want to share my story with you. I remember the first time I ran my fingers down that smooth slab of oak, the one I'd milled myself in the back corner of my garage-turned-workshop. Every mark I'd made, every curve I'd carved by hand was a piece of me laid bare. I spent evenings after my shift, greasy hands shaking in the midnight glow of my single flickering bulb, learning the language of wood. I figured out how to coax it into shapes I could sell to pay rent to fund my real dream. A fully equipped studio where I could design furniture, sculpt installations, maybe even prototype sustainable building materials. I wasn't just flipping planks, I was crafting my future one dovetail joint at a time. I'd saved every coin I could spare, snatching extra shifts at the cafe, skipping dinners out, and even selling my old guitar to upgrade my table saw. By the time I'd earned enough for the CNC router I knew would turn my side hustle into a real business, I felt invincible. This workshop wasn't just a hobby, it was my ticket out of the dead-end cycle my small town offered. I'd watch sunrise through the old-streaked window, a mug of black coffee at my elbow, drafting sketches of commissioned chairs and architectural models. I imagined shipping orders across the state, building a reputation I could be proud of, never mind what my family thought. But to them, my sanctuary was just clutter. They'd roll their eyes when I mentioned bids from local boutiques or my online shop's growing waitlist. My mom called it a cute thing that keeps you busy, like I was collecting stamps, not pouring years of blood and late nights into every cut and finish. My dad never acknowledged my work beyond a grunt when he needed a new shelf. Meanwhile, my brother, my younger brother, was the golden child, the miracle kid who could do no wrong. If he wanted a guitar with exotic inlays or a custom drum kit in candy apple red, my parents didn't even blink at the price. When he needed money for band equipment, they wrote checks without asking if it meant leaving me in the lurch. I stayed silent, ashamed to ask for just one favor after the hundreds they'd done for him. So I kept my head down, cutting dovetails, perfecting mortise and tenon, envisioning the day I'd march into their living room bearing a checkbook too thick for them to ignore. In those early months, I thrived on small victories, a glowing 5-star review on the Woodworking Forum, a local paper calling my pieces exceptional craftsmanship. Each endorsement felt like oxygen, pushing me further away from their narrow view of who I was. The workshop smelled of fresh sawdust and varnish, and I bathed in that confidence every morning. I planned trips to trade shows, researched eco-friendly finishes, drafted tax projections. I was building more than tables. I was building a life where I mattered on my own terms, but they never saw it. To them, I was still that kid experimenting in the garage, a boy with big dreams they tolerated because it cost them nothing. They'd interrupt my afternoon flow, stomp in to steal a strip of pine for my brother's latest whim, no apology, no question. My mother would pat my shoulder while carrying a box of my clamps to the front porch, insisting she was doing me a favor by helping my brother start his band. When I protested, she sighed like I was being dramatic, telling me to prioritize real family needs. Deep down, I suspected the real reason they favored him was they recognized his every decision justified their sacrifices. He was their unquestioned project. Me, I was just an expense they'd grown used to ignoring. Still, I couldn't help but push on. Every chop of my saw blade, every plane I heated until the iron was glowing, I felt the future pulsing under my fingertips. My dream hung on those shelves of chisels and turned leg blanks, each piece carrying a promise that I'd break free, that one day they'd watch in awe as I signed contracts and packed shipping crates destined for cities they'd never seen. I relished the thought of their faces when they realized that the little guy they dismissed was the same one writing checks that paid the bills. I was building more than furniture. I was building a message they'd never ignore. And that message was just beginning to form. I was elbow-deep in varnish when I first smelled something off. It wasn't the sweet chemical tang of the finish, it was the acrid stink of panic. My phone buzzed, a group text from mom and dad, all caps and exclamation points. "Call US now urgent," it read, followed by 3 crying face emojis. My heart thudded. I'd learned early that if they wanted me at the dinner table with emergency emojis, it wasn't because the power was out. I wiped my hands on a rag, glanced around at the half-built cabinet on my workbench, and felt something curl in my gut. I answered. My dad's voice trembled. "It's your brother. He gambled away the money for his new album. The studio owner is demanding payment or he'll press charges." My stomach lurched. He'd been itching for a home studio for months. I'd overheard him bragging about the custom-built console he still couldn't afford. I shouldn't have been surprised. He'd always craved the spotlight more than he craved common sense. I told him dozens of times not to throw good money after bad, Dad went on, but you know how he gets. My own blood. I closed my eyes, picturing my brother hunched over the piano keyboard, pound key reckless, chasing notes that never stuck. It was textbook. "So what do you want me to do?" I asked. My tone was calmer than I felt. The room felt suddenly too small, the air sticky with tension. There was a pause. My mom took over. Sweetie, we need to cover a $2,500 debt by tomorrow or they'll haul him off to court. My breath caught. Okay, I don't have that kind of cash. I drained every extra cent into the workshop. Well, we could borrow, Dad began, but my mother cut him off. Borrowing's not enough, honey. We need real collateral. We need something they can sell. I heard the catch in her voice, the cold calculation. I think we have just the thing, the thing. The words rang like a hammer to my chest. You can't be serious, my voice shook. I don't have anything else to give. I pictured the workshop door, the glow of the single bulb above my table saw, the neat rows of chisels hanging on the wall. We'll cover for you later, they promised. We'll make it right. But my father's assurances felt empty. They'd always talked big about making things right with me, only to slide me aside for my brother's next reckless venture. You're just going to sell it. I whispered, it's our family decision. A decision made without me. I slammed the phone shut and bolted for the garage. My heart hammered so hard I could feel it in my throat. I swung open the door and froze. The air was cold, the workshop dark where the light bulb should have been. Electric cords dangled like spider legs, tools scattered on the floor. My CNC router, my pride and future, was gone. The heavy bandsaw, the workbench I built with my own 2 hands, even the wall-mounted dust collector had vanished. In its place lay junk, a broken lawnmower, a stack of dusty flower pots, a battered wheelbarrow. Someone had thrown in random yard sale cast-offs to fill the space. I staggered forward, my lungs burning, scanning the emptiness. Every drill bit missing, every clamp gone, every piece of my dream reduced to a cavernous vacuum. I sank to the concrete, hands pressing against my temples as a wave of nausea rolled through me. My dreams were collateral damage. My parents had signed over titles, handed over receipts, and watched men in a beat-up van haul it all away like yesterday's trash. I heard the front door close and their tentative footsteps on the porch. I didn't bother to look up. I wasn't going to scream or cry, there was no energy left for that. I was just broken. My mother's voice drifted through the open door. We tried to save your brother, honey. We thought you'd understand. I laughed low and hollow. Understand? You sold my future. You sold every Saturday I spent here, every midnight oil I burned. My father's shoulders sagged. We had no choice. I wheezed a bitter chuckle. There's always a choice. They shuffled closer, watching me seated among the stray flower pots. I wanted to shake them, make them feel a fraction of the betrayal I felt. But my rage was starving for oxygen, my grief sucking the strength from my limbs. I shoved past them and ran for the street. The sun was high and the day too bright. I hugged my arms around myself as tears stung my eyes. In that moment, the world felt vast and empty. My sanctuary was gone, my future was rented out for my brother's fleeting whims, and my family believed they'd done the right thing, but in my chest something hot and sharp flared, a spark of fury, of defiance. They thought they'd crushed me. They thought the kid in the garage was helpless. They were about to find out just how wrong they were. I hadn't planned on speaking to them again, but the anger burning in my chest wouldn't let me stay away. I stood on the front porch, fists clenched so tight my knuckles turned white. The door clicked open and my mother peered out, eyes flicking from my face to the smudges of sawdust still on my jeans. She didn't invite me in, she just shifted aside like I was a stray cat she felt obliged to rescue. Inside, the living room felt too small, the furniture arranged in the same way it always was, as if nothing had happened. My dad sat on the couch, his tie loosened, the remote forgotten in his hand. My brother lounged next to him, scrolling on his phone, oblivious or uncaring, I couldn't tell which. You're home, Mom said, voice tight. She hovered by the doorway, arms folded. We need to talk. I didn't sit. Instead, I paced the threadbare rug, breathing hard. I'm listening. My dad cleared his throat. Son, we know you're upset. Upset felt like a temperate word for the furnace I'd become. We sold your workshop tools because your brother had an emergency, he said. His tone was clinical, like he was describing last night's weather. Emergency was the word that broke me. You sold everything. You turned the place where I built my future into a junk pile. My mother stepped forward. It was necessary. Your brother's career is important to this family. Career. Her mouth curved into the tiniest smirk, as if the concept of what I did in the garage wasn't a career. It was a hobby, she'd said before, like I'd been collecting souvenirs. How is that fair, I spat. I've worked for years. I poured every spare cent into that equipment. I sacrificed food, nights out, even time with friends to build something real. Dad leaned back. We understand you're passionate. His voice dipped into that condescending register parents use when they're indulging a tantrum. But your brother needed help. He's the one with the talent, the one who moves things forward for this family. You, on the other hand, have options. Options? I echoed, my heart pounded. I have one shot. That workshop was everything. My mother let out a short laugh. Hun, you can always rebuild. You're young. Young, as if age had anything to do with it, as if the hours and sweat and money I'd invested meant nothing. You think it's easy to just start over? I asked. Find replacements for those tools. Good luck scraping together the funds again. She raised an eyebrow, unbothered. I'm sure you'll manage, Dad chimed in, picking up momentum. You know how it is, son. Families have to pull together sometimes. We chose to solve a crisis. Your brother's dream was on the line. We did the only thing we could. I swallowed hard. My dream was on the line too. Silence. They had no response. My mother tapped her foot. We're not apologizing. We did what was best. Best. The word echoed around the empty room. You sold my lifeblood, I said, voice raw, and you expect me to just move on? My dad shrugged. We expect you to understand priorities. You're safe, son. You have a roof over your head, food in the fridge. He nodded at my brother, who looked up from his phone for a split second, then went back to scrolling. Your brother could have ended up in court, worse, thrown in jail. We nipped it in the bud. Don't you see? We saved him. I felt bile rising. By destroying me, my mother shook her head. You're being dramatic. You're making this bigger than it is. Dad stood, smoothing his shirt. We believe in you, son. We know you'll bounce back. We just need you to support your brother like you always have. Support, brother, two words that now felt like nails in a coffin. I took a step forward, so angry my vision blurred. I've been supporting him my whole life. Every favor, every loan, every silent sacrifice I made so you wouldn't notice. Is that enough support? My mom's face tightened. Don't put that on us. You know we love you. Love, I repeated, voice cracking. This is love. I glanced at my brother, a smirk playing on his lips as if none of this mattered because it wasn't his problem anymore. You'd rather see him safe than let me chase my dream. You'd rather destroy me than risk his reputation. Dad sighed, tired. Life isn't fair, son. Sometimes you lose something to gain something else. I felt the final straw snapping. Don't tell me about life's unfairness when you're the ones doing the shafting. My voice rose so loud the house seemed to shake. I gave you everything I had and you spit it back like it was nothing. My mother's eyes narrowed. Get a grip, you're blowing this out of proportion. I laughed, bitter, empty. You know what's out of proportion? Your priorities. I turned on my heel and walked toward the door. My heart pounded and tears stung my eyes, but I refused to look back. Their justifications rang in my ears, each one a dagger twisting in my gut. No apologies, no remorse, just smug rationalization and a demand that I move on and keep quiet. But quiet wasn't an option anymore. I'd been broken, betrayed, and dismissed, and they'd made it clear I was replaceable. They didn't know it yet, but all they'd done was light the fuse. The days after I stormed out felt like wading through tar. My stomach knotted into a permanent coil. Sleep became a stranger. I crashed on my friend Jordan's couch, surrounded by takeout boxes and the hum of his second-hand air mattress. I had nothing but the jeans on my back and a duffel of dirty t-shirts. I didn't text my parents again. I deleted their numbers. If they wanted updates, they could crawl through their own guilt and call me. Every time my phone buzzed, I flinched, half expecting my mother's voice begging me to forgive them. But she never did. I realized something had died in me when the silence felt better than their hollow apologies would have. Without the workshop's glow of sawdust and machines, I felt unmoored, forced to reckon with the anger and grief roaring in my chest. I refused to waste time feeling sorry for myself. I'd been betrayed, sure, but I wasn't broken. I remembered the spark that had fueled me when I first hoarded pennies to buy that CNC router, the rush of planning my future from the glow of my desk lamp. That fire didn't go out just because my assets were gone. It was still burning, fueled now by righteous fury. One morning I woke up, head throbbing from Jordan's ceiling fan oscillating overhead, and I decided to face reality. I sketched a new blueprint on a napkin, no heavy equipment, no massive overhead. Just me, my laptop, and internet bandwidth. I'd pivot into digital design, custom furniture renderings, virtual prototypes, augmented reality staging. I'd use my woodworking knowledge and pair it with software, creating a service that would let clients see their dream furniture in their own homes before a single plank was cut. No physical tools needed, just my talent and a subscription to the right design suite. My neighbor down the hall owned an unused room he'd rent cheap. I grabbed that space before he could change his mind. The room was bare, 4 cinderblock walls, a single window, and dusty linoleum. I cleared out a corner for my beat-up laptop, loaded design software, hooked up an old drafting tablet Jordan gave me, and slapped a sheet of plywood on 2 sawhorses as a makeshift desk. It felt meager, but it was mine. In that bare room, I felt a renewed sense of possibility. I reached out to a few old clients, cafes and boutiques I'd helped with real prototypes, and offered them free mock-ups of new pieces they could sell. I posted samples on Behance and LinkedIn, my tone blunt and desperate. Walk with me in virtual reality through your next custom design. I expected radio silence. Instead, inquiries poured in. People loved the idea of seeing a mid-century console before committing. A local cafe requested a 3D render of a communal table with integrated planters. An up-and-coming interior designer wanted virtual staging for her clients' furniture choices. My inbox pinged so frequently I had to set aside blocks of uninterrupted time just to respond. I stayed up late, fueled by black coffee and spite, learning every shortcut in the software, teaching myself plug-in scripts so I could batch render scenes faster. Every completed project UV mapped my confidence higher. I watched riveted as a client rotated my model on their screen, zoomed in on wood-grain textures I'd painstakingly scanned from my last scraps of oak, and I felt that old rush, brighter than ever because I'd clawed it back from rock bottom. It wasn't just about paying rent. It was about proving to my family that you don't need a fancy workshop to make magic. You need vision, skill, and the guts to keep going when everyone bets against. Word-of-mouth referrals kicked in. A remote architecture firm hired me to render furniture for virtual walkthroughs of an office building they were repurposing. A podcast host asked me to demo a piece in augmented reality for their audience. My humble room had become a command center for something bigger. I still haven't spoken to my parents. I don't plan to until they show me they understand the cost of what they did. Right now, I'm too busy building a digital empire from scratch, a phoenix in pixels, rising from the betrayal that nearly destroyed me. And the best part is they'll have to watch it happen online, in real time, without a hammer or saw in sight. I woke before sunrise most days, my alarm set to 5:00 a.m. so I could steal an hour before the world stirred. My makeshift office in that rented room was still dark when I sat at my folding table, booting up the laptop and scribbling fresh ideas into a battered notebook. No one knew I was back at it. My parents imagined me penniless and defeated, while my brother probably assumed I was too bruised to even try. But I'd made a vow, if they thought I was down, they were going to watch me climb without warning. Step 1 was reputation hacking. I created a series of forged case studies on a separate portfolio site, crafting the backstory for each project. Virtual conference hall furniture line for innovative co-working spaces or YAR-enabled retail display for emerging fashion labels. I rendered polished images and wrote client testimonials in perfect corporate tone. No one checked because the work looked legitimate and the links were solid. Within a week, my inbox pinged with cold emails. An upstate real estate developer wanting to virtually stage empty apartments, a boutique hotel seeking digital mock-ups of custom headboards. They didn't know my coffee-stained desk was a plywood plank on sawhorses. I showed them renderings of walnut bed frames floating in model bedrooms, clients rotating the pieces in real time. Each time they placed an order, I small-stepped my prices up, just enough to stay competitive but inching toward where my skills were truly worth. Step 2 was networking through subterfuge. I joined private Slack channels for furniture designers and AR developers, posing as a consultant for a firm that didn't exist. I offered solutions to their problems: how to optimize 3D models for mobile AR, how to simulate realistic wood textures without killing frame rate, and they started referring me to their actual companies. Soon I had legitimate contracts. I even landed a small retainer with a San Francisco startup building an app that let users customize modular shelving. The pay was modest but recurring, and it covered my rent with change left over to upgrade my internet plan. Step 3 was automation. I couldn't spend all my time manually retouching renderings. I spent nights teaching myself scripting in Blender and Python, writing simple plugins that batch-processed client assets. One script swapped wood finishes on the fly, another tweaked lighting angles across dozens of scenes in seconds. It felt like hacking my own creativity, giving myself time back to chase new opportunities rather than slog through repetitive tasks. While I slept, my laptop churned through renders and uploaded finished files to client portals. I woke to emails marked delivered and approved. Each green check felt like a silent victory against the family that told me I was replaceable. Step 4 was diversification. I realized that most virtual staging focused on static images. What if I offered micro-interactions? I learned Unreal Engine basics and created tiny animations, drawers sliding out, chair cushions puffing up, a lamp turning on with a soft click. I pitched this to a remote workspace company rebranding their offices, and they bit. Suddenly, my deliverables included interactive walkthroughs with furniture that responded to user commands. It wasn't just pretty pictures, it was a step into true augmented reality experiences. The price tag reflected that leap, and the checks reflected my new confidence in charging for innovation. Step 5 was branding. I built a simple logo and a clean landing page, but I buried it behind layers of SEO-optimized case studies and blog posts about future trends in virtual interior showrooms. I populated social media with professional-looking teasers, screen captures, and animated GIFs, but I never advertised directly. Word spread organically. I began getting inquiries from sectors I never imagined: film production companies wanting previsualization for set furniture, museums seeking virtual exhibits during lockdowns, even a university offering digital twin tour of campus dormitories. With each new email, I felt the old rush, that heady thrill of potential translating into dollars. By month 3, I had more work than I could handle alone. I quietly recruited 2 freelance 3D artists through the same Slack channels I'd infiltrated. I vetted their portfolios, then offered them contracts under my studio's name, paying them fair rates because I remembered what it was like to scrape by. Their help let me pitch larger gigs, like a national furniture chain wanting an augmented showroom app. When that contract came through, I'd already proven my studio's capabilities, and the deal landed with a 6-figure number I'd never dreamed writing on a check. Late at night, I'd catch myself grinning at the screen, imagining my parents reading about this somewhere, powerless to intervene. I hadn't just rebuilt, I'd reimagined what was possible. My humble roots schooling myself on free tutorials, coding scripts in stolen hours, grinding out mock projects became the secret sauce that made my work fresh and resourceful. The silent ascent wasn't flashy. There were no billboards or press conferences. Instead, there were strategic moves in the shadows, a steady accumulation of proof that skill and grit could outperform privilege. Every new client, every glowing review slipped under the nose of those who thought they'd shut me down. And all the while, I waited for the moment when the world would notice, and my family would realize the real cost of underestimating the kid they'd cast aside. I checked my email first thing that morning and froze when I saw the subject line, "Congratulations, 2024 Innovator of the Year." It was from the International Design Guild, the same organization that had rejected my workshop plan years ago for being too small scale. I clicked through with trembling fingers and discovered my name and my studio's logo printed in bold at the top of a dazzling online brochure. They awarded me the Emerging Tech Award for Virtual Furnishings, citing my pioneering micro-interaction models that bridge the gap between digital and physical design. Beneath the headline was a professional photo of my interactive shelving system, complete with a QR code linking to a 3D demo. I stared at it like it was a hallucination. A notification beeped on my laptop. Twitter was exploding with screenshots and congratulations. Influencers in architecture and AR tech were retweeting my work, calling it the future of furniture buying. One viral post had already racked up 15,000 likes, a side-by-side reel of my old workshop sketches morphing into my digital models, captioned "From Dusty Garage to Global Stage." My phone buzzed with LinkedIn notifications, clients and colleagues I'd never met sending me messages of praise. I felt tears prick at my eyes. This moment was everything I'd fought for. But it wasn't enough to celebrate alone. I dialed my dad's number, needling for news of whether they'd heard yet. The line went straight to voicemail. I left a message in a voice so steady it surprised me. "Dad, check the Design Guild website. I think you'll want to see this." I hung up and didn't wait for a call back. Instead, I pulled up the local news site for my hometown, the same paper that once featured my brother's band in the arts section with a talented youth blurb, and scanned the headlines. There it was, "Small Town Dreamer Wins International Design Honor." The article described how a former garage woodworker had reinvented the furniture industry with an app that let customers stage AR furniture in their own living rooms. I read it again, savoring every word that belittled my parents had once used against me. Young man abandons traditional workshop for cutting-edge digital approach. His early setbacks only fueled a career breakthrough. I felt a surge of triumph so intense I could barely sit still. I grabbed my phone and hopped on Facebook, searching for their profiles. My mother had already shared the news article on her timeline with the caption, "So proud of my son." It was strange seeing that phrase coming from her, but the comment thread was full of congratulations from neighbors who'd seen her posts. I scrolled down and found my father's share, too. He'd posted a link to the Guild's award page, calling me a true innovator. Their public pride was a heady satisfaction, but I knew it rang hollow without an apology for what they did. Still, for a moment I let myself bask in it. I forwarded the link to my freelance artists in Jordan, who all responded with animated GIFs and all-caps praise. We set up a group call to celebrate. Between toasts, someone joked that I'd gone from vanishing into their garage to commanding a global audience without firing a single saw blade. We laughed, but that laughter carried a sharp edge of vindication. Later that day, an email landed from a major furniture retailer offering to partner on an AR shopping app pilot. Their message started, "We've been following your work since your Emerging Tech Award. We'd like to discuss bringing your interactive models to our e-commerce platform." I sat back and let the sheer scale of it sink in. Years ago, the only doors I could open were the ones I built myself. Now a multinational chain was knocking, ready to hand me the keys. I closed my eyes and pictured my family's living room, the place I'd once dreamed of marching in with a triumphant checkbook. Now they'd already seen the news, the shares, the retweets. They couldn't pretend I was a hobbyist anymore. I gave my answer, "Yes, absolutely, let's get on a call." Around supper time, I decided to swing by my parents' house. I hadn't been back since I moved out, but I wanted to see their faces when they realized this wasn't a rumor. I stood on the sidewalk, staring at the picket fence and the yellowing siding, feeling the neat rows of their flower beds mock me. I knocked, and my mother answered as if she'd been waiting. Her eyes widened when she saw me, then softened as she led me inside to the TV, which had the awards ceremony playing on mute. I watched my own acceptance speech in silence, mouthing the words I'd spoken. "This is for everyone who thought I couldn't do it." She reached out to touch my arm. "I'm so sorry, honey," she whispered. For the first time, I felt her apology reach me. My father joined us in the living room doorway, his eyes red. My brother hovered at the edge of the frame, awkward and uncertain. I swallowed. Thank you, I said quietly. The room was full of unspoken history. I didn't know if forgiveness would ever come easy, but right now they couldn't look away. Not from what I'd built with nothing but vision, skill, and stubborn heart. Not from the kid they once cast aside, now standing in living color on an international stage. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was exactly where I belonged. I saw the email before my parents did, an alert from my brother's recording studio. His emergency problem had resurfaced with a vengeance. The man who'd bought my CNC router and table saw was demanding the final installment on the equipment loan, plus late fees that had piled up. My brother's band contract had fallen through, leaving him unable to pay rent or cover the maintenance fees on the studio. Now the studio owner was threatening legal action and seizure of the entire setup, soundboards, mics, the works. My parents' quick fix had turned into a full-blown disaster. I watched from my living room, the award plaque from the Design Guild glinting on the shelf behind me. I couldn't resist forwarding the email thread to my mother, along with a simple note. Looks like the emergency is back, only this time selling my tools didn't solve it. Her reply came minutes later, shaky and short. Please help. I felt a cold satisfaction. Not joy, there was nothing noble in their suffering, but I wanted them to understand the cost of their betrayal. By the next day, my father had confessed that they drained their savings paying the studio owner's initial demand and covering my brother's rent. My parents were deep in debt, calls from creditors pinging through their home phone and spiking their anxiety. Every option they'd banked on selling my workshop to rescue my brother had blown up, leaving them worse off than when they started. My mother admitted over the phone, voice quivering, "We never realized how valuable your tools were to you. Or what your dream could become." My brother called next. He sounded humiliated, laced with desperation. Can you lend me some cash?" He needed $5,000 to prevent the studio seizure, plus another $2,000 in legal fees. I paused. I'd carved out a six-figure pipeline with my digital studio, more money than I'd ever imagined earning. I could clear their debts, bail out my brother, and restore some sense of peace. But I also remembered the years of dismissive insults, the cold hobby jokes, the way they'd wiped out my life's work without a second thought. I typed back, "I'll help, but you have to understand what this means." I laid out terms. My brother would sign over half the band's future royalties to pay down the debt. My parents would formally apologize in writing, and they'd publicly share the story of my award-winning venture, acknowledging the value they once scorned. It felt almost cruel to demand equity in their own family drama, but I wanted them to feel the gravity of their mistake. They agreed. Within hours, I wired $7,000 to the studio owner's account. The seizure threat vanished. My brother's studio and, more importantly, his career was saved. But the loan documents I received as part of the arrangement bore my name as co-signee. If the band earnings didn't cover the full amount, I'd have legal claim. I'd effectively become part owner of the very dream they'd nearly killed. Later that evening, I visited their house one more time. The one-sprout picket fence sagged, their finances stripped bare. My father looked at me with a mixture of relief and shame. My mother's eyes were brimming with regret. My brother stood beside them, guilt etched into his face. I handed them a printed copy of my acceptance speech from the guild. "This is for everyone who thought I couldn't do it." I watched their faces as they read the words that had once mocked them, words now radiant with triumph. In that tense silence, I realized the true echo of ruin wasn't their debts, nor the lost equipment, but the pride they'd sacrificed when they destroyed my dream. Now, with my help, they were rebuilding, but on my terms, acknowledging the value they'd once thrown away. I left them standing in the twilight, the weight of their betrayal and my reluctant mercy hanging between us. Their ruin had come full circle, and they could no longer ignore the worth of what they'd almost destroyed. They called morning, noon, and night, texts, emails, even a LinkedIn message from my mom's account. "Please talk to us," she'd write, her words laced with desperation. My brother begged for guidance on repaying the debt I'd co-signed. My dad tried to schedule a meeting to make things right. But the truth was obvious. None of them deserved another lifeline. They'd gambled away my future once. I wasn't about to do it again. I let their messages pile up, unread variations of the same plea. Each ping felt like a reminder of everything they'd taken from me: tools, trust, the chance to build a life on my own terms. I decided it was time to close the loop. I picked up my phone and called my brother first, switching my voice to ice. "I read your messages," I said, "but I'm not your safety net anymore." His sigh crackled through the line. "Please, I need your help. I've learned from my mistakes." "You didn't learn the first time," I replied. "You almost lost the studio setup because you didn't plan for consequences. You nearly buried me in the process. I won't bail you out again." He stuttered, desperate. "Come on, it's family." "Family isn't a free pass," I said. "It was you who put us in this position. You sold what was precious to me and I saved your skin on my terms. Now you need to figure it out on yours." He went silent and finally hung up. I felt no victory, just the clean click of finality. Next, I called my dad. He answered on the second ring, voice thin. Son, we need to talk. Can we come by? I pictured them rehearsing apologies they didn't mean. Why? I asked. What do you want? There was a long pause. We want to understand how you did it, your business, your success. We thought maybe you could teach us. I cut him off. I taught you plenty about loyalty and respect when I poured my savings into that workshop. You refused to learn then. I won't tutor you through this mess now. My father's voice cracked. We're drowning in debt. You're the only one with the answer. I let that hang a moment. I built my answer from nothing. You took it away. Now you have to build your own. He stammered an apology, but it sounded like gravity pulling him down. I'm sorry you feel that way, I said. Goodbye. I ended the call and silenced my phone. Their final attempts, voicemails begging for mercy, sat in my inbox, unread and unreturned. After I hung up, a weight lifted off my chest. I no longer needed to explain myself to people who refused to see me when I was at my lowest. I closed my laptop and stepped out onto the balcony of my apartment, the city lights sprawling beneath me like a grid of possibilities. I'd spent months grinding, transforming betrayal into a digital empire. Now I was free to grow without looking back. A different kind of rich wasn't just money, it was peace of mind, integrity, and the knowledge that I owed my success only to myself. My phone buzzed one last time, a text from a new client asking for an augmented reality demo. I opened my calendar, blocked off time tomorrow morning, and typed back, "Let's do this." I watched the notification send, then slid the phone into my pocket. Behind me, the unanswered pleas from my family faded into silence. Ahead of me, the future shimmered with the work I loved and the respect I finally gave myself. It wasn't spite or vengeance driving me, just the steady pulse of ambition, the same force that had kicked me into gear after they tried to bury me. They'd pushed me down once, but now I soared above their reach. And this time I wasn't looking back.